Following the release of Cassante, the champions that came after were pretty mellow all things considered. Millie was a fairly chilled champion with a lot of situational utility, not particularly remarkable but not unusable either. Neferi was pretty overtuned when she came out, but conceptually is a very straightforward champion with digestible strengths and weaknesses. Briar has comparatively gone through more balancing turmoil due to having an unconventional, or should I say uncontrollable playstyle, but like Neferi, she's all about numbers at the end of the day. Despite Hui possessing the most amount of abilities we've seen to date, he's actually been the most harmless of the 5 recent champs, frankly speaking. But I think a lot of that has to do with him being intentionally made into a jack of all trades, therefore not being egregious in any department. And finally Smolder. Smolder was a little troublesome, but once more he had a fairly simple kit that just needed to be fine-tuned a bit. Compared to the sheer overloadedness of champions back in 2020 through 2022, 2023 and 2024 so far haven't been the worst. But it's been half a year since our most recent champ, and Aurora was confirmed as a new release. A curious new Vestein belonging to the Freljord, and the first battle mage to come out in a very long time. I believe the last new battle mage to come out was actually Talia way back in Season 6. There were a few reworks like Swain, Acel and such, but in terms of a fresh new champion, it's been a minute. So let's not waste any more time and investigate the new AP solo laner. Is Aurora a 200 years champion, or is she well designed? As a brief reminder, what separates a battle mage from their burst and artillery peers is one thing: DPS. Artillery mages are about steady, continuous long-range fire, gradually poking down the enemy team in neutral while positioning themselves just outside of range to avoid getting retaliated on. Burst mages prioritize stacking all their abilities on top of one another to deal as much damage as possible in a short amount of time, hence the term burst. While some of them can remain in combat, they generally have a cooldown period, giving their opponents a chance to fight back if they manage to survive the initial assault. In contrast, battle mages are known for their incredible sustained DPS, especially against multiple enemies. So long as they're alive, they are always a threat, making them effectively public enemy number 1, as they possess arguably the highest teamfight pressure out of any class in the game, while also being potentially the most durable mages too, either because of internal sustain from heals or shields, or having the luxury to build more tanky items like Rod of Ages, Rylai's, Leandri's and such. This is counterbalanced by battle mages having the lowest threat ranges compared to burst and artillery though. Remarkably, while over the past few years, the champion design team has pretty much forgotten about the constraints and boundaries of their own class system, as evident by divers having the same uptime as skirmishers or assassins having incredible teamfight pressure, the mage archetype has been comparatively more faithful to their 3 classes and their respective attributes, which has me more inclined to believe that Aurora's designation as a battle mage will be adhered to. Although to be fair, battle mages are some of the most annoying to fight because of how threatening they can be to their entire team, and some of them are also annoying to deal with in lane. Aurora's passive is Spirit Abjuration. Damaging abilities and basic attacks apply stack onto enemies, with the 3rd stack dealing bonus max health damage. Alright, look, I'm gonna withhold judgment until after I see the rest of her kit, but right away we're checking out 2 boxes of modern day champions, a 3-hit passive and % max health damage, though in her defense, it makes a lot more sense for a battle mage to have % health damage. If any mage class were to be appropriate for killing tanks or beefy boys, it would be the one with sustained DPS. But there's a lot more to her passive beyond just damage. After getting 3 stacks off a champion or epic monster, she also acquires a spirit that follows her, kind of like those memes that follow Bard, and she gets a buff for 3 seconds, refreshing upon additional procs of her passive. Spirit mode gives her movement speed and health regeneration based on the number of spirits you have, so the idea is to stay in combat for as long as possible. The more you're fighting, the more spirits you're collecting, which means the faster you get and the more you heal. Spirit Abjuration's perma-stacking effect is reminiscent of Zeri's Lightning Crash. When playing Aurora, you want to stay in combat ideally forever, and when fighting against Aurora, you want to try and kite out her passive effect. Personally speaking, as a bruiser main and especially as a top main, I don't like this playstyle, because it gives off a strong implication that Aurora will be one of those annoying ranged top laners that kites you all the time while you're just sitting there taking DL until the mid game, or unless your jungler ganks. Casting aside bias for a moment though, if I were to give her the benefit of doubt, I can't help but feel like her spirit mode only lasting 3 seconds is kind of unforgivingly short. I can understand a champion like Jax or Olaf having only 2.5 seconds to refresh their passive given their auto attackers, but Aurora's not an auto attacker. She has 3 damaging abilities, of which her Q can proc twice, but outside of that, trying to maintain a spirit mode without the assistance of her W and ultimate seems pretty tough, although at the same time, a spirit mode lasting 5 seconds would be too excessive, and it would make it too easy for her to acquire a ton of spirits, especially in teamfights when she's damaging everyone. So maybe I'm mistakenly thinking about her passive in a laning phase context when the duration makes a lot more sense in skirmishes or teamfights. Overall, it seems pretty fair and lends itself to the expected playstyle of a battle mage. 2 full text is your Garden Variety damaging tool, obligatory on every champion. A Blast of Energy 4 that damages enemies and marks them for 5 seconds. When recasting Q, you can extract the mark from all enemies to deal an extra bit of damage. They actually give you a worthwhile incentive to hold off on immediately recasting because not only can it deal up to twice the damage based on enemy missing health, but the bolts attack all enemies they pass through, very similar to Zai's blade color and function, so you want to line them up as best you can to strike as many champions at once. If you do this correctly, Aurora's Q has a total AP ratio of over 150%, which is a lot, but realistically it's not that different from your other boomerang abilities like RAQ or Echo Q. You get more reward for using it correctly, but less reward if you use it incorrectly essentially. I can see a basic combo on Aurora being Q auto then recast Q to get Spirit Mode. At the time of writing this, we don't know the actual range of this effect, only the mana cost, cooldown, and cast time, but assuming it follows the expected range of 8 to 900, it's a decent neutral poke tool. Across the Veil is my least favorite ability, not because it's overpowered or anything, but because I hate invisibility. Who doesn't though, let's be real. Aurora jumps a short distance and goes invisible for up to 2 seconds, during which she enters her Spirit Mode. It should be noted that this does not give her a Spirit, so she only gets the base health regeneration and move speed. I'm assuming if she's already in Spirit Mode, you can use Across the Veil to extend its duration in the event you're unable to attack a champion for a while. Now this is where I feel conflicted. Takedowns against an enemy champion within 3 seconds of damaging them instantly resets her W's cooldown, so theoretically you can go invisible for up to 12 seconds. The reason I feel conflicted is, on one hand, all Across the Veil does is give her a small bunny hop and a 2-second invisibility. There's no super crazy effect or super mega ultra buff. It does give her Spirit Mode, but without spirits it's not the worst thing out there. It's like what, 15% movement speed and 100 heal? Who cares? But in application, this will make her the most annoying champion to try and catch. I understand she's a rabbit and rabbits are evasive creatures, but we all remember how aggravating Dustblade was back when you used to have that 1.5 second invisibility upon takedown. Aurora's W is essentially that Dustblade passive, and she can even jump over walls with it. To be fair, there's a long cast time to this ability. I say cast time, is actually animation, and you can see where she's going. It's not like Shaco where he randomly poofs. So if you see Aurora using W to hop over a wall, you can at least get an idea of where she's trying to escape to. From her passive and W, I don't think Aurora is broken or 200 years, but I do think it encourages a very annoying hit and run playstyle where you chunk your opponent, then dip away to safety and just keep repeating that rotation. Having said that, an annoying playstyle alone does not make a champion badly designed. It's only bad if it's annoying and there's no counterplay to it, but there's plenty of counterplay for Aurora. Her passive can be mitigated by simply stalling out her Spirit Mode's very short duration. Her Q can be mitigated by having your team spread out so she not only doesn't tag all of you, but she can stack damage on all of you on the return trip. Her W at least tips you off about which direction she's jumping towards, so you can get an idea of her general direction. She seems perfectly fine right now, much as the words burn my tongue to admit it. The Weirding is another straight line blast of energy that damages and slows enemies hit for a short moment, a rather innocuous attack that appears to serve as a form of setup for her Q, although interestingly she jumps backwards a tiny bit after using it, almost like a clutch shotgun or Graze ult. I took notice of her E having a slightly longer cast time than usual, 0.35 seconds instead of 25, which makes it flashable on reaction if you're ready for it. On a side note, I love how most modern day champions have 2 or 3 abilities with a really long and or gimmicky description to them, and then there's that one ability that's like a single line of text. Anyone else notice that? Briar's W and E had 50 paragraphs of text, and then her Q is just jump and stun enemy. Nafiri's Q and W have a bunch of stuff, and then her E just rolls into enemies for damage. Anyway, back to Aurora's E, nothing out of the ordinary with this attack. Before we talk about her ultimate, I appreciate that true to my assumption they're adhering to the constraints of the Battle Mage class rather well. From watching Skin Spotlight's demonstration of Aurora, both her Q and E have modest ranges, and though technically she has 2 movement abilities in the form of W and E, both of them are very short in terms of distance, which is good. Battle Mages are supposed to be immobile champs who trade speed for overwhelming raw kill power. Aurora gives off the same kind of attack style as Victor and Vladimir, where you go in, do your combo, walk around for a bit, and then go in and do your combo again. So far, her kit has been very simple to understand. In fact, you can fit all 3 of her basic abilities on one screenshot. How about that? But this is where things get complicated. Between Realms has her summon a big bubble cage that deals damage and traps herself and all enemy champions inside for 3 to 4 seconds. Enemies also get slowed for 2 seconds, and while inside the cage, Aurora's movement speed and regen are doubled. If she touches the border, she gets immediately pinballed to the other side, while enemies that touch the border get punted back in and heavily slowed for 1.5 seconds. At any point after 1 second, Aurora can recast the ability to dissipate the bubble prematurely. I know I just got done saying that battle mages are not supposed to be very mobile, and I do still stand by that in spite of her ultimate. Let's break this apart one aspect at a time, starting with the trapping enemies thing. First and foremost, the condition of being trapped inside the border is based on if you touch the wall as it punts you back. In other words, it is possible to escape her cage if you either have a blink, letting you go past the wall without explicitly touching it, or if you have some kind of CC immune dash like a Malphite ultimate or something like that. Yes, this also means not even Aurora can stop a Mundo from going where he pleases. If his canister's on deck, he can just walk right through the bubble. I saw comments of people calling this an overpowered version of Camille's ultimate since it can trap the entire enemy team inside, but there are ways to escape it. Furthermore, it bears repeating, Aurora herself is also trapped inside there, so while you can't break the zone by knocking her out of it like you can with Camille, you can also just gang up on her and take her out. Now, the second part where she can bounce from one side to another. I feel like the most common way to use her ultimate will actually be as an escape tool, since if you're being attacked, you can pop her ultimate, intentionally bounce back to the other side and then cancel the ultimate to walk away, or keep bouncing back and forth to kite them. It might sound absurd on paper for a battle mage to have an escape option, but remember, this is in place of an actual big teamfight ultimate. Yes, the initial cast deals a bit of damage, but when you picture a battle mage, you think of a humongous big damage ult like Vladimir, Karthus, Asol, Anivia, Victor, Swain, and Rumble. If all the Aurora player gets out of her ultimate is a blink to the other side, that's a pretty lame move in comparison. All the same, this further accentuates the whole notion of her being a very annoying hit-and-run type character, likely causing players to be unhappy with her release not due to being overpowered 200 years like Cassante or Belveth, but just because she's annoying. Conceptually though, I don't see any major red flags with her kit. There's counterplay to all aspects of her gameplay, and nothing in particular that stands out as destroying the fabric of space-time or being 1v9 material. To be frank, a part of me can't help but feel like she doesn't even give off that much of a oh everybody run sense of terror that battle mages inspire in people. When you see a late game Victor or Karthus, everyone gets nervous because of the sheer volume of DPS they bring to the table. Enough to where even if they're the only AP champ on the enemy team, your team still has to build some semblance of MR lest they get one-shotted. But all I really see Aurora doing is toss out a Q and E and then just walk around being annoying to hit. She does do damage, her Q and E have insane AP ratios, not to mention the percent max health from her passive, but in terms of impact, she feels a lot more like Ari or LeBlanc, and yet she's not a burst mage, nor is her range big enough to be an artillery one. I have half a mind to call her a specialist purely for the sake of her not really fitting into any of the 3 niches we have so far, although attributes wise, Aurora is closest to a battle mage. Class aside, from a design perspective, I think they did a good job keeping her from going out of control. Her ultimate's a very weird ability, but a lot of its gimmickiness is just that, a gimmick, not something like Silas, Viego, or Cassante where they steamroll all over your team for being OP. I can imagine the key aspect they'll be targeting for balance being how easily she can rack up spirits. If it's too easy for her to get 10 million health regen and 1000 movement speed, then we have a problem, but that's about it. At the current moment, I actually think she's going to be underpowered, although I suppose not every new champion needs to be game-shattering since that would just be power creep. So I guess to wrap up my first impressions of her, Aurora is annoying. That's it. I really don't like her playstyle from a bias perspective because I hate those types of evasive hit and run range champions who can poke you, then the moment you try to go in, they just run away. Kennen, Gnar, LeBlanc, I understand that none of these champions are game-breaking and that fighting a Yone or Cassante would be far more calamitous, but it's just not fun. It's like fighting a zoner in Smash or a camper in a first-person shooter. It's just not interactive for one person, and while most hit and runners crumble to pieces when they do get engaged on, the fact that neutral is so one-sided is what damages the experience for me. Altogether though, I think she's a fair champion. Annoying, but fair. What do you guys think about Aurora? Do you agree with my assessment of her, or do you believe there's something terribly wrong about her that I haven't mentioned? You're welcome to share in the comments. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other champion first impressions videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.